I was halfway to the door when she looked up with tears quietly gathering in her eyes and asked me the one question I never imagined hearing from a stranger: marry me for 6 months. My heart froze. Every instinct told me to walk away. It sounded like a scam, a desperate lie, or the beginning of a disaster I didn't need. But then she told me the reason behind those impossible words, and in that moment, saying no suddenly felt far more difficult than saying yes. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the incredible ways one act of compassion can change a life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more AS story. My name is Nathan, and I lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Nashville, Tennessee. At 34, life had become painfully ordinary. After losing both my parents within 3 years, I had buried myself in work as an electrician. My apartment was silent every evening except for the sound of the television that I barely watched. Friends had drifted away after marriages and children filled their schedules. I convinced myself loneliness was simply part of growing older, even though every holiday reminded me how empty my life had become. The rainy Tuesday I met Rebecca felt like every other day until my truck broke down outside a neighborhood medical clinic. While waiting for a tow truck, I stepped inside to escape the cold. She was sitting alone in the waiting room, wearing navy blue nursing scrubs beneath a gray sweater, staring at paperwork with exhausted eyes that looked as though they hadn't known peaceful sleep in weeks. She apologized after accidentally dropping a folder near my feet. As I helped gather the papers, I noticed hospital forms, legal documents, and what looked like adoption paperwork. She looked embarrassed but thanked me warmly. Something about her quiet dignity stayed with me, and before leaving, I wished her good luck without knowing why she seemed to need it so badly. A week later, our paths crossed again at a small coffee shop. She recognized me instantly and asked if she could buy me a coffee to thank me for helping with her papers. I almost declined, but something about her sincerity convinced me to stay. That simple coffee became 2 hours of conversation. Rebecca told me she worked double shifts at the local hospital while caring for her younger brother Caleb after their parents died in a tragic highway accident. Caleb was only 14 and had a congenital heart condition that required expensive treatment. Although Rebecca had sacrificed everything for him, the legal guardianship process had become complicated because distant relatives suddenly appeared, hoping to gain control of the modest inheritance left by their parents. The court believed Caleb needed what they called a stable family household. Rebecca's attorney feared that being unmarried and constantly working long hospital shifts could weaken her case, despite her unwavering devotion to her brother. Then came the question that changed everything. She looked directly into my eyes, fighting back tears, and quietly asked if I would consider marrying her for 6 months. At first, I honestly believed I had misunderstood. My mind raced through every warning I had ever heard about fraud, manipulation, and impossible situations. I politely prepared to refuse. Then Rebecca slid a photograph across the table. It showed a smiling teenage boy connected to hospital equipment, somehow still laughing despite the tubes around him. On the back of the picture, written in faded ink, were the words their mother had written years before: "Always protect each other." Rebecca explained that she wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking for romance. She only wanted enough legal stability to keep Caleb from being taken away by relatives who had ignored them for years. After 6 months, once the guardianship hearing concluded, she promised we could quietly divorce and continue our separate lives. That night I barely slept. Logic insisted I stay away. My heart kept returning to that photograph. 3 days later, I agreed. The courthouse wedding was almost painfully simple: 2 witnesses, a judge, and no celebration afterward. We moved into the modest home Rebecca had inherited because it seemed more convincing for the legal process. We agreed on clear boundaries and separate bedrooms, but life rarely follows carefully written agreements. Slowly, our temporary arrangement became something neither of us expected. I watched Rebecca leave before sunrise every morning to care for strangers before returning home to cook dinner for Caleb, help him with homework, organize medications, and somehow still smile through complete exhaustion. She never complained. She never asked for sympathy. Caleb slowly opened up to me as well. We spent weekends fixing bicycles, watching baseball, and working on old woodworking projects in the garage. For the first time since losing my parents, the house no longer felt empty. Laughter returned in quiet, unexpected moments. Then everything nearly fell apart. Caleb's heart suddenly worsened, and doctors recommended emergency surgery. Insurance delays threatened to postpone the procedure. Without hesitation, Rebecca offered to sell the house. She believed losing the home was a small price if it meant saving her brother. Watching her prepare to sacrifice the last physical memory of her parents broke something inside me. I emptied nearly all my savings without telling her, and paid the remaining medical costs. When she discovered what I had done, she cried harder than she had the day we met. Not because of the money, but because someone had finally chosen to stand beside her instead of walking away. Weeks later, Caleb's surgery succeeded. Then came the guardianship hearing. The judge carefully reviewed months of evidence showing a loving, stable household. Neighbors testified about the family dinners. Teachers described Caleb's improved confidence. Hospital staff spoke about Rebecca's extraordinary character. The distant relatives had little to offer beyond legal arguments. Rebecca was officially granted permanent guardianship. That evening, we sat quietly on the back porch watching the sunset. The 6 months were almost over. Neither of us mentioned divorce. Instead, we talked about planting flowers in the spring, repainting the garage, and taking Caleb on his first vacation after he fully recovered. Without realizing it, we had already begun planning a future together. A few days later, I found the original agreement folded neatly inside a kitchen drawer. Rebecca smiled softly, tore the paper into tiny pieces, and dropped them into the trash. No dramatic speeches. No elaborate proposal. Just two people who had entered each other's lives through necessity and discovered the family they both believed they had already lost forever. Sometimes love doesn't begin with fireworks or perfect timing. Sometimes it quietly grows through shared burdens, sleepless nights, hospital visits, and ordinary acts of sacrifice. Sometimes the strongest marriages begin with the weakest reasons and become something far greater than either person imagined. Years later, Caleb graduated from college healthy and full of dreams. As he thanked us during the celebration, he said something I will never forget. He told us that 6 months had saved his life, but choosing to stay had given him a family. If this story touched your heart, please write the words "kindness changes everything" in the comments below. We'd truly love to read your thoughts. And before you go, if this story inspired you or reminded you that hope can appear in the most unexpected moments, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that inspire faith, compassion, and the power of second chances.